Chapter 7. Evidence of the incapacity of the present French government. A legislator resembles the creator by not working all the time. He creates and then he rests. All true legislative action has its Sabbath, and intermittence is its distinctive characteristic. Ovid thus announced the truth of the first order, and he said, Quod caret orterna requie durabile non est. If perfection were an attribute of human nature, each legislator would speak only once. But since all our works are imperfect, in the measure that political institutions deteriorate, the sovereign is obliged to support them with new laws. Nevertheless, human legislation should resemble its model by this intermittence of which I have just spoken. As honoured by its repose as by its original action, the more it acts, the more human and the more fragile its work. Look at the labours of the three French National Assemblies. What a prodigious number of laws! From 1st July 1789 to October 1791, the National Assembly passed 2,557. The Legislative Assembly in 11.5 months passed 1,712. The National Convention, from the first day of the Republic to 4th Brumaire of the year 4, 26 October 1795, passed in 57 months 11,210. I doubt that the three French royal houses ever produced such a collection. When one reflects on this infinite number of laws, one experiences in turn two very different sentiments. The first is that of admiration, or at least astonishment. With Mr. Burke, one is surprised that this nation, whose levity is proverbial, has produced such obstinate workers. Such a structure of laws is a stupefying monument of Atlantean proportions. But astonishment immediately becomes pity when one thinks of the nullity of these laws, and one sees mere children killing each other to build a house of cards. Why so many laws? Because there is no legislator. What have these so-called legislators done in 6 years? Nothing, for to destroy is not to make. It is hard to imagine the unbelievable spectacle of a nation giving itself 3 constitutions in 5 years. A real legislator does not fumble around. He says, fiat, and the machine goes. Despite the various efforts the 3 assemblies have made in this matter, everything has gone from bad to worse since the ascent of the nation to the work of the legislators has been steadily decreasing. Certainly the Constitution of 1791 was a vain monument to folly. Nevertheless, it must be admitted that it enthralled the French, and that the majority of the nation wholeheartedly, if foolishly, swore an oath to the nation, the law, and the king. The French were so taken with this constitution that even after it was no longer a practical question, it was common enough to hear them argue that in order to return to the real monarchy, it would be necessary to go back to the Constitution of 1791, which is really equivalent to saying that to return to Europe from Asia, it is necessary to go by way of the moon, but I am merely setting out the facts. Condorcet's constitution was never tested and was never worth trying. The one that was preferred, the work of a few cutthroats, still pleases similar men, and this phalanx, thanks to the Revolution, is numerous enough in France. So all things considered, of the 3, the present constitution has the fewest supporters. In the primary assemblies that accepted it according to the government, many members naively wrote, accepted for want of something better. This, in effect, is the general disposition of the nation. People submit through lassitude, through despair of finding anything better. Overwhelmed by an excess of misfortunes, they thought they could gain a breathing spell under this frail tree. They preferred a bad port to an angry sea. But nowhere does one sense conviction or sincere consent. If this constitution really suited the French, the invisible efficacy of experience would be winning new supporters every day. But what is happening is precisely the opposite. Democracy loses a new deserter every minute. Fear and apathy are all that guard the pentarchy's throne, and the most clairvoyant and disinterested travellers who have been to France all agree that it is a republic without republicans. But if, as has been so often preached to kings, the strength of a government resides entirely in the love of its subjects, if fear alone is an insufficient means of maintaining sovereignty, what must we think of the French Republic? Open your eyes, and you will see that it does not live. What an enormous machine, what a multiplicity of springs and clockwork, what a fracas of pieces clanging away, what an immense number of men employed to repair the damage. Everything tells us there is nothing natural in these movements, for the primary characteristic of the creations of nature is power accompanied by an economy of means. Everything being in its place, there are no jerks or bumps, friction is low, and there is no noise, only majestic silence. So it is that in the mechanism of nature, perfect balance, equilibrium, and exact symmetry of parts give even rapid movement the satisfying appearance of repose. Therefore, sovereignty does not exist in France. Everything is artificial and violent, and it all announces that such an order of things cannot last. Modern philosophy is at the same time too materialistic and too presumptuous to perceive the real mainsprings of the political world. One of its follies is to believe that an assembly can constitute a nation, that a constitution, that is to say, the totality of fundamental laws that are proper to a nation and that give it such and such a form of government, is an artifact like any other requiring only intelligence, knowledge, and practice, that one can learn the trade of constitution making, and that any day they think about it, men may say to other men, "Make us a government," as they say to a workman, "Make us a steam pump or a stocking frame." Nevertheless, it is a truth, as certain in its way as a mathematical proposition, that no great institution results from deliberation, and that human works are fragile, in proportion to the number of men involved in their construction and to the degree to which science and reasoning have been employed a priori. A written constitution, such as that which rules the French today, is only an automaton possessing merely the exterior appearance of life. Man, by his own powers, is at most a Vaucanson. To be a Prometheus, he must climb to heaven, for the legislator cannot gain obedience either by force or by reasoning. At the moment, the experiment may be said to be over, for to say that the Constitution is working would be inattentively to mistake the Constitution for the government. The latter, which is a highly advanced despotism, works only too well, but the Constitution exists only on paper. It is observed or violated according to the interests of the rulers. The people count for nothing, and the insults that their masters address to them under the forms of respect are well suited to cure them of their errors. The life of a government is something as real as the life of a man. One senses it, or better, one sees it, and no one is deceived on this point. I beseech every Frenchman who has a conscience to ask himself if it does not take some effort to give his representatives the title of legislators, if this title of etiquette and courtesy does not cost him the kind of effort he experienced when, under the old regime, he was pleased to call the son of a royal secretary Count or Marquis. All honour comes from God, said Homer of old, to he spoke exactly like St. Paul, without having plagiarized him. One thing certain is that man cannot impart that indefinable characteristic that is called dignity. Honour belongs preeminently to the sovereign alone. From him, as from an immense reservoir, it is bestowed in proper number, weight, and measure on various classes and individuals. I noticed that when a member of the legislature spoke of his rank in a pamphlet, the newspapers mocked him, because in effect there is no rank in France, but only power, which merely depends on force. The people see a deputy as only the 750th part of a power capable of doing a great deal of harm. A deputy is respected not because he is a deputy, but because he is respectable. Everyone would undoubtedly like to have given Monsieur Simeon's speech on divorce, but everyone wishes that he had given it before a legitimate assembly. Perhaps it is an illusion on my part, but this wage that a vainglorious neologism calls an indemnity seems to me to prejudice the French system of representation. The Englishman, free by law and independent by fortune, who comes to London to represent the nation at his own expense, has something imposing about him. But these French legislators who charge the nation 5 or 6 million livres to make laws for it, these decree sellers who exercise the national sovereignty for 8 myriagrams of grain per day, and who live off their legislative power, such men are not, in truth, very impressive. And when one comes to ask what they are worth, the imagination cannot help evaluating them in wheat. In England, these two magic letters, MP, add it to a little-known name, suddenly exalt it, and give it the right to a distinguished marriage. In France, a man who would intrigue for a deputy's place in order to gain an otherwise unlikely marriage would most probably be reckoning poorly. This is because any representative, any instrument whatever, of a full sovereignty can excite only curiosity or terror. Such is the incredible weakness of isolated human power that it is not even capable of establishing a style of dress. How many reports were made to the Legislative Assembly on the costumes of its members? 3 or 4 at least, but it was always in vain. Pictures of these beautiful costumes are sold in foreign countries, while in Paris, public opinion ridicules them. An ordinary costume, contemporaneous with a great event, can be consecrated by that event. It will then have a mark of distinction that will sustain it in the world of fashion. While other styles change, it will remain the same, always respected. This is more or less the way that costumes of great dignity originate. For those who notice all sorts of things, it may be interesting to observe that of all the revolutionary finery, the only items that have had a consistent popularity are the sash and plume, and these come from chivalry. These survive, although blighted like trees from which the nourishing sap has been cut off, but which have not yet lost their beauty. The public official, laden with these dishonored symbols, is something like a robber, conspicuous in the clothes of the man he has just stripped. I'm not sure how well I read, but I read the nullity of this government everywhere. Conquests by the French have drawn a great deal of attention and created illusions about the prospects of their government. Even the best minds are dazzled by the glamour of these military successes, and so they do not at first perceive to what degree these successes have nothing to do with the stability of the Republic. Nations have conquered under all possible forms of government, and even revolutions, by exalting morale, may lead to victories. The French will always succeed in war when under a firm government that has the wit to praise them while despising them, and that throws them at the enemy like bullets while promising them epitaphs in the newspapers. Even now it is still Robespierre who is winning the battles. It is his iron despotism that leads the French to butchery and victory. It is by squandering gold and blood, it is by straining every resource that the masters of France have obtained, the successes we witness. A superlatively brave nation, exalted by any kind of fanaticism, and led by able generals, will always conquer, but it will pay dearly for its conquests. Did the Constitution of 1793 receive the seal of longevity from its 3 years of victory? Why should it be otherwise for that of 1795? And why should victory give this one a character that it was unable to give the other? Moreover, a nation's character always remains the same. Berkeley, in the 16th century, succinctly described the military character of France. It is a nation, he said, supremely brave and invincible on its own soil, but when it expands beyond its borders, it is quite another thing. This is why it has never been able to retain dominion over foreign peoples, and why its strength is its own misfortune. No one feels more strongly than I that the present circumstances are extraordinary, and that it is very possible that what has always happened before will not happen this time. But this question is irrelevant to the purpose of this work. It suffices for me to indicate the falsity of the argument that the Republic is victorious, therefore it will last. If it were absolutely necessary to prophesy, I would rather say that war keeps it alive, therefore peace will kill it. The inventor of a system of physics would undoubtedly congratulate himself if he had all the facts of nature in his favor. I can cite in support of my reflections all the facts of history. Examining in good faith all the examples history furnishes us, I see nothing favoring this chimerical system of deliberation and political construction by abstract reasoning. At the most, one could mention America, but I have replied in advance to this by saying that the time has not yet come to cite it. I will, however, add a few comments. 1. British America had a king but never saw him. The splendor of monarchy was foreign to it, and its sovereign was a kind of supernatural power that was never really felt. 2. It possessed the democratic element that existed in the constitution of the mother country. 3. It possessed, besides, those democratic elements that were carried hither by a multitude of its early colonists, who were born amid political and religious troubles, and were almost all Republican-minded. 4. The Americans built with these elements and on the plan of three powers that they received from their ancestors, and not at all tabula rasa, as the French did. But all those things that are really new in their government, all those things that are the result of popular deliberation, are the most fragile parts of the system. One could scarcely combine more symptoms of weakness and decay. Not only do I doubt the stability of the American government, but the particular establishments of English America inspire no confidence in me. The cities, for example, animated by a hardly respectable jealousy, have not been able to agree as to where the Congress should meet. None of them wanted to concede the honor to another. In consequence, they have decided to build a new city to be the capital. They have chosen a very favorable location on the banks of a great river and decreed that the city should be called Washington. The sites of all the public buildings have been marked out, the work has begun, and the plan of this Queen City has already made the rounds in Europe. Essentially, there is nothing in all this that surpasses human power. A city may easily be built. Nevertheless, there is too much deliberation, too much humanity in this business, and one could bet 1,000 to 1 that the city will not be built, that it will not be called Washington, and that the Congress will not meet there.